Ellentube, I think, but I have not seen.
For your own creativity.
Okay.
So can you see that string?
Yes.
Here?
Right.
Word of the day is schematic. You honestly cannot function at the tournament without knowing how this works. It's not difficult, but this is how you know when and where you're competing. So, you do need to start out by understanding that schematic has a really important synonym, which is why I made it huge and in red. Some people, like old school debaters, will call them schematics. Some people do call them postings. So you need to know that those really are synonymous. You have to be ready to identify that word either way. Schematic, posting, posting, schematic. So schematics, look at the definition, it's a list put up at the tournament, and it tells competitors, it tells you when and where you're competing. So look at examples. The schematics are a wealth of information. They're going to give you tons of stuff that you and your adult probably need to know. Number one, it tells you which classroom you're competing in. Number two, it tells you sometimes who your judge is. Some tournaments will have that, some tournaments won't. And then for LD and policy, this is the moment you find out if you're AF or NEG. You don't know until the schematic goes up if you're AF or NEG. And remember, you will be AF and you will be NEG because you have 3 different rounds. So the schematics or the postings are specific to every single event. So there will be one for oratory, one for extemp, one for LD, one for policy. It also, for LD and policy, will tell you who your opponent is. It doesn't happen a lot, but every once in a while, you might go against the same opponent. Debate 2, will you raise your hand if that's ever happened to you, that you went against the same opponent more than once? So it happened to Ellie, yeah. It's not super common, but it has happened. And some of you, like especially in the policy world is kind of small because people are afraid because it is tough. And so you'll start recognizing your opponents sometimes. You'll be like, oh, I know about this kid. And you can start kind of strategizing as soon as you see who your opponent is. So also, at this first tournament in March, there will be a novice schematic and a varsity schematic. So for all the people that this is your first time going to a middle school debate tournament, you are novice. You'll only be going against other novices. If you have ever been to a middle school debate tournament before, you will be in the varsity category, which means you'll be going against other kids who already know what a tournament is like. So I have had it happen where some novices freak out and they're like, Mrs. Coates, my name's not on the schematic. And then I'm like, did you look at the novice one or did you look at the varsity one? So that's one thing to always be careful. I'll show you an example in just a second. So the cafeteria is usually like home base in the tournament for all of the competitors. And so you'll see when we get to the tournament, there will be a wall of the cafeteria. Well, you'll see signs posted, oratory, novice oratory, extemp, novice extemp. There'll be a whole line of them. And then you'll know when it's time to go to your round. Once you see a lady walk out with like 8 pieces of paper, she'll start taping the schematic for that round underneath the title page. And that is your cue. It's time to go debate. And so that's also really important because when you get back from your first round, you might have a lot of wait time, you might have hardly any wait time. The trick, if you get back from round 1 and you go look at the schematics or the postings and it still says round 1, you have wait time. If you get back from round 1 and it already says round 2, which sometimes happens, but usually you have a little bit of wait time. But if it says round 2, you need to actually leave immediately and then go to round 2, okay? So that is your clue. And keep in mind, when the schematic goes up, it's not like you have to panic. They build in time at the tournament for you to be able to actually find where you're competing. So just because it says that the round is starting soon doesn't mean that you don't have like 5 minutes to track it down. And guys, honestly, debate 2, would you agree that like you get to your room like 15 minutes before your judge? All of debate 2 just nodded their head. So that's another reason you don't have to freak out. Because judges are often coming from one round to the next, and you often do have to wait on judges, so just expect that, okay? Now, extemp and oratory, the schematic is when you find out your speaker order, if you're first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and so on. I'll show you an example. The first sentence is important. So when the schematics get posted, especially the first round schematic, listen carefully here, guys, there's usually, I would say, at least 500 debaters at one debate tournament. So you'll get kids who have been trained, the schematic means you go to your round. It doesn't mean you have to panic, though. honestly, just be a little strategic. Wait until the craziness dies down. Wait until like 300 kids leave, then go up. Then go look for yours. You don't have to try and shove yourself into the horde of children trying to find where they're competing. I highly recommend, if you have a phone, bring your phone up with you. Take a picture of the schematic. And that way, let's say you're walking to your round and you're like, I just forgot what the room was. That way you don't have to walk all the way back to the cafeteria. Take a picture. Or when it was me and before technology, I would always have a marker and I would write the room number on my palm. And I was covered in writing by the end of the tournament. Okay, whatever you have to do to remember what room it says. This one is really, 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 really important. Mostly for the goal of me not getting yelled at by a parent, which happened one time. So you have unofficial homework. It comes to the second sentence. You have to warn your parent or your guardian, whoever your adult is, how to find you at the tournament. If you don't do it and I get yelled at, you're in trouble, okay? So you have been warned. What you basically need to warn them about is that it can take time to find you. No adult should expect to show up at the tournament like they might at school and to be able to find you within a couple of minutes. It takes much longer at a tournament. If you don't warn your adult about this before the tournament, okay? So you have to basically say, you have to train them about schematic. You can even pull up this vocab chart and you can show them the examples I'm about to show you and teach your adult, you guys. You have to teach them how to read the schematic and that usually you're not available because you're somewhere else in the building off debating or speaking. So the story goes that this was like 8 years ago. None of you know this kid, but this kid, his mom, like lots of debaters do, brought him food and expected, because the debater didn't do their homework, and the mom expected to be able to give his Wendy's to him within 2 seconds. It took her a solid 15 minutes, which is normal, but then the mom made the effort to come find me and yell at me that her kid had to eat cold fries. Because he didn't do his homework. So that was on him, not on me, because that's normal. And again, that's another reason why I recommend not getting dropped off hot food. It might not be hot by the time you eat it. Okay, let's look at examples. So debate one, do this with me, or you can just look at the screen. But if you click this hyperlink right here, let's teach you how to read a schematic. It's really easy once you get the hang of it. But the first thing you're going to look at, let me zoom in just a little bit. First thing you're going to try and figure out, which type of debate is this for? So it says right at the top, this one's for policy. It doesn't say if it's novice or varsity, which means it's for all of them. It says it's round 3, and it has a start time. Ignore the start time. They are almost never accurate. It's a computer software program they use, and so it's going to put a start time there. Ignore it. Remember, your trick, whether or not you go to your next round, is which schematic it has up, right? So pay attention to which round, not the time. Notice there's an AF column. I think it's your brother, Charlie. And a neg column, okay? And this is for policy, so it has both of their last names. Notice it has this weird code next to the person's name. That's just a randomly assigned school code, so you can ignore that. It has the room. That's the most important piece of information. And sometimes it will actually have a judge name. Okay, so that's a policy schematic, which looks a little different. Look how different an extemp schematics looks. And oratory, your schematics look the same, so pay attention here. So it says novice extemp. Ignore the start time. This was round 1. This is the room. Do you see how there's it's a little hard to see. Do you see how there's a slightly different shaded part at the top than there is at the bottom here? So this is the first group of kids that have been randomly put together. This is the second set of kids who have been randomly put together. So this is where you find out your speaker order, extemp and oratory. So this kid was the first speaker. That was weird. It doesn't have their name. That's because their coach registered them wrong. This was an Albion kid. So he was the third speaker. This was another Albion kid. This is Lincoln's brother. He was the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th speaker. So he knew that he had some wait time before he had to speak. The room is super important. Sometimes it has the judge's name. Okay, so that's about it. This is a varsity. That's the big difference. That's varsity versus novice was the last one. This is oratory. Oratory schematics are usually much larger than extemp schematics. So this is normal. See the shading? You can see kind of gray and white and gray and white. That means each kid is in a different group. And this one is formatted a little weird. The judge would be the one to decide. Does it go like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Or does it go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? The judge decides in that case. Sometimes the judge will just call you up randomly on their own volition anyways, okay? And then we've got the room, we've got the round, and we've got the title. Does anyone have questions? Because we're about done with this, but it's really important that you clarify if you have any questions. So again, you can show these examples to your adult, train them how to read the schematics. They're also called postings, remember? And everybody give me an example in the you try box and go turn that in, okay? I'll give you a second to do the you try box.